Political change doesn't happen without activism, as we're always saying on this program. And here to talk with us once again about the activism beat on Capitol Hill is Jocelyn Macurdy Keats. Jocelyn is a friend of the program. She is also an on-air reporter with ACT TV, and she is on the Hill following all this stuff all the time. So first of all, Jocelyn, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Great to see you. And did I properly describe you?
Yes, you did. That was a great representation.
Oh, all right. Okay, good. So tell us. So the big news we're covering this week, well, there's a lot of big news. One of the big stories, obviously, is the introduction of the Medicare for All bill, spearheaded by Representative Pramila Jayapal. And I was curious to know, in your view, the relationship between the introduction of that bill and activism, either leading up to it or maybe coming activism in support of it. Any thoughts?
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts. So Representative Jayapal herself, an activist, before she launched her congressional bid, she launched a bill with 100 co-sponsors and overwhelming support from Center for Popular Democracy, the Women's March, Social Security Works, and a lot of civil disobedience leading up to this bill's introduction. So especially with the Be a Hero campaign, we had a number of activists who were staging demonstrations in front of Mitch McConnell's office and the Hart office building. And it was, you know, both to support the ACA and to push for single payer, which, thanks to all this publicity, now the majority of Americans are polled as supporting, which is crazy 70%. Exciting. Yeah.
And a lot of that activism, I think, was spearheaded by disabled people, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And a lot of, so Adi Barkan, the gentleman who he works for, spearheads a Be a Hero campaign, confronting Senator Flake in a plane and saying, I'm dying and I shouldn't be concerned about the healthcare costs. I should be focused on the tragedy and realities of that. People, you know, healthcare is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country, is just overwhelming. It's absurd. It's a human rights violation in any number of ways. And I think we finally have congressional action we need to say that people should be able to, in a rich country, afford very basic healthcare. And finally, we have the political chutzpah to do it, because so many brave people were putting themselves out there, and they have the public support, which is really exciting.
Well, and as I'm always saying, you know, sort of brings it home for people in Congress who may, you know, lead sheltered lives in certain ways when these actions take place on Capitol Hill. And I'm glad you mentioned Pramila Jayapal being an activist by background herself, because we had her on the show and we had a great conversation with her about this sort of inside-outside strategy where we look at our elected officials stop looking at them so much as the people who will lead us and start thinking of them so much as fellow participants in a broader movement for social change.
I love that you said that. I mean, that's the thing, you know, there is understandably a certain amount of reverence people want to give their leaders, but these are just human beings. And if they're doing things which are either misguided or maybe just misinformed, the beautiful thing about living in a democracy is we can go to where they are and say, this is the reality of these things you're voting for. You might think that you're just voting for health care bills, which are upholding the status quo, but it's killing people. Harvard released a study saying that 45,000 people a year die unnecessarily because of healthcare infrastructure problems, because not being able to afford their care. And it's tragic.
And specifically that 45,000 people a year were dying because we don't have single payer. We don't have Medicare for all.
Yes,
so
exactly.
That's a perfect example. The other example, of course, is the widespread planetary death and destruction we're likely to face if we stay on the present course. And their, you know, Sunrise Movement of young people have been shown great leadership. We've had one of their members on recently. What's going on there with the Green New Deal, for example?
Again, it's been a really beautiful week on the Hill. Ignore Michael Cohen. Look at everything else. The Sunrise Movement staged nationwide actions on Monday to support the Green New Deal introduced by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and 42 people were arrested in front of Mitch McConnell's office alone. Like, it's been really overwhelmingly powerful to see all these young people be willing to do something that not that long ago would have probably been seen as fringy or edgy, but is becoming mainstream. Like, you don't want to listen to us and vote in order to uphold our basic ability to live and exist on this planet. Fine, we're going to come to your office and we're not going to leave.
See, here's what I love about the Sunrise Movement and the Green New Deal. I mean, there's several things, but one is I love that it's being led by young people, really young people. And because they are, of course, as everyone keeps saying, the ones who will live the longest and with the worst consequences of doing nothing or not doing enough. But the other reason why I love it, the same reason I love Medicare for All, I hear people on the right and the so-called center, you know, Democratic establishment attacking these ideas, but every time they attack these ideas, they're talking about these ideas. It means for the first time, and God knows how long, the left, which in my view is the popular opinion in most cases, but if you want to call it the left is leading the debate instead of being led by what other people want to talk about.
You know, I love that you say that because it's so true. I think this year with this beautiful, bold new Congress we have and all this youth-led action is really centering the debate that no, it's not the right versus the left. It's a very small number of elites versus people who are protecting their will to live. And it's really important for us to be bold and affirmative, like you said, to lead the debate and not respond to false dichotomies which are created by people with a great number of resources to protect those resources. And I think the climate debate is one of those. Fossil fuel tycoons are really great at creating scientific certainty around climate change when we sort of need to ignore that. Science is overwhelming here. Human-guided climate change is happening, and we need to go to the sources of power and say, create legislation which protects us, or we're not going to have a human race in not that long.
And speaking of beautiful new members of Congress, did you attend the Cohen hearings?
So I wasn't there, but a lot of my friends were, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was wonderful.
She was great. I'll tell you who else I thought was great was Rashida Tlaib.
Yes, yes.
She's gotten a lot of heat for it, once again, but I thought that when she pointed out that it was racist to stand up, to use a black person as a prop to defend an out-and-out racist like Donald Trump, I thought that was great. I thought that defines, you know, when you talk about a movement and an inside-outside strategy, like the conversation we had with Pramila Jayapal, part of their role, I think, is to make sure the rest of the country is having the conversation that, their part of the country, you know, the political establishment, is having the conversation the rest of the country has.
Yes.
And if there's racism, if somebody uses what used to be called tokenism in that way, for example, this new Congress, these new members of Congress are willing to say it.
I thought it was beautiful too. And I think the great thing about Representative Tlaib individually is she does sort of stand by what she says. People will give her hate. She'll nope, I said what I said and I mean it.
Stop apologizing. No apologies. I'm all for that. And yes, I do agree that that AOC did a great job. And by the way, there was a great, Ryan Grimm had a great tweet about it where he pointed out that not only was she impressive, but think of all the other people currently working service jobs to get by, like she was a year ago, because that's how they have to get by in this economy, who are also gifted, who are also not using their talents. So
that's it. Well, and she tweeted about that. Somebody said, "Are we sure she wasn't a lawyer instead of a bartender?" She said, "Actually, as a bartender, you have to use a lot of really essential professionally valid skills, like reading people, being able to hold them accountable." And it is, I think, really beautiful to see actual members of the working class protecting their interests, which is what we need.
Absolutely. I was never a bartender, but I used to play music in bars a lot. And I can attest to the professionalism of certain bartenders. The ones who don't have the chops don't last. Well, anything else we should be looking at, you think, in the weeks to come?
You know, I think really for everyone to stay focused on the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. There are a lot of other really important things happening. You know, victory on the bipartisan background check this week with gun control reform. But these are the two pieces of legislation that have the attention and the media momentum. Make sure you go to your representative's office, call, email, whatever, and let them know you want this too.
Well, and let them know you want it, and let them know that you won't accept the excuse that Medicare for All or Green New Deal won't pass the Senate, because you know what, background checks won't pass the Senate either, and they had no problem voting for that. So that's what we want to see from you too. All right, Jocelyn Macurdy Keats, as always, great to talk to you. Keep up the great work at ACT TV, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much.